Well, meanwhile, later on, it was in fact through this emergency route that the sale of the tank shells to Israel was in fact commissioned. Now, half of Gaza's population is starving. This coming across from the United Nations officials amid the desperate humanitarian crisis, which certainly is widening. An Israeli study has found that civilians make up 61% of the total amount of death toll from the airstrikes across the Gaza Strip. On the other hand, University of Pennsylvania president has stepped down amid criticism of anti-Semitism testimony. What's going to happen in Harvard? What's going to happen in other top universities? Well, we'll have to wait and find out. Meanwhile, the Israeli Defense Forces has declared deaths of 5 more troops, ladies and gentlemen, including nephew of ex-IDF chief Eisenort, who also lost his son. The World Health Organization is going to hold an emergency meeting on the Gaza health situation. This has been proposed by 15 members. Meanwhile, India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, he has spoken to the Palestinian Prime Minister and reiterated India's long-standing position on the conflict. Now, it's important to note that Israel's military chief, Lieutenant General Herzi Halevi, has urged increasing pressure on Hamas, noting signs of their system to be collapsing. He stated that terrorists surrendering indicate need to intensify the efforts further.
I see the achievements from day to day. We are seeing every day terrorists who are killed, also terrorists who are injured. In the last days, we see terrorists who are surrendering, a sign of the collapse of the system, a sign that we need to press harder. And this is what we are doing.
But even as there are calls to intensify the ground operation, the IDF has announced deaths of 5 more soldiers. 1 succumbed to the October 7th wounds and 4 died in the fighting inside the southern Gaza Strip. The IDF took to the microblogging website and tweeted it out on X, formerly known as Twitter. Now, the toll in the Hamas offensive now currently stands at 97, ladies and gentlemen, including the nephew of ex-IDF chief Gadi Eisenort. The IDF says another 12 soldiers from several units were seriously wounded during the fighting in Gaza on Friday and Saturday. Meanwhile, a military spokesperson for Yemen's Houthis warned that all shipping companies against cooperating with Israel, saying they will be a target of attack in the Red Sea if they do so. Yahya Sari, well, he has said this on several accounts that it is in fact going to be a target of concern. It's going to be either Gazan aid or it's going to be a target. Meanwhile, Hamas's official Izzat al-Rashid accused Israeli forces of a heinous crime against innocent civilians after images circulated on social media showing detained Palestinian men stripped to their underwear in Gaza. Some Palestinians said they recognized relatives in the images and denied they had links to Hamas or any other group. The International Committee of the Red Cross expressed concern over the images, emphasizing the need to treat detainees with humanity and dignity in line with international humanitarian law. Izzat al-Rashid, who is in exile, called on international human rights organizations to intervene for the men's release. Meanwhile, Israel also issued clarification on the issue.
We are talking about individuals who are apprehended in Jabalia and Shaja'iyya, Hamas strongholds and centers of gravity. We're talking about military-aged men who were discovered in areas that civilians were supposed to have evacuated weeks ago. We've been calling for an evacuation of those Hamas strongholds in order to locate the Hamas October 7th monsters with minimal harm to civilians. Now, those individuals will be questioned, and we will work out who indeed was a Hamas terrorist and who is not.
Well, meanwhile, thousands marched through London during a protest in solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza. Israel ordered residents out of the center of Gaza's main southern city Khan Yunis on Saturday and pounded the length of the enclave after the United States wielded its UN Security Council veto to shield its ally from a demand for a ceasefire. Since the truce collapsed last week, Israel has expanded its ground campaign into the southern half of the Gaza Strip by launching the storming of Khan Yunis. And this is not the first time that a pro-Palestinian protest is being carried out across London. Meanwhile, the Biden administration has invoked emergency authority, bypassing the congressional review to permit the immediate sale of approximately 14,000 tank shells to Israel, valued at about $106.5 million, according to the Pentagon's announcement on Saturday. This move comes under an Arms Export Control Act emergency declaration issued by the State Department. The tank rounds are part of a larger package exceeding $500 million, encompassing 45,000 shells designed for Israel's Merkava tanks, commonly used in the offensive operations inside the Gaza Strip. As the conflict escalates, scrutiny has intensified regarding the precise deployment and impact of United States' weapons and weaponry in the region. While U.S. officials assert that there are no plans to impose conditions on military aid to Israel, human rights advocates that reservations have come out to the fore about the sale, arguing that it contradicts Washington's efforts to encourage Israel to minimize civilian harm. United States Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, the man on your screens, has reportedly provided Congress with detailed justification for the immediate provision of the tank shells to Israel, citing national security interests. The sale involves items from the U.S. Army inventory, specifically the 120mm M830A1 high-explosive anti-tank multi-purpose with tracer tank cartridges and other related equipment for the Merkava tanks. And the ripple effects are being felt. University of Pennsylvania's president, Liz Magill, who came under fire for her stance on anti-Semitism on her institution's campus, has tendered her resignation, according to a message that was sent on Saturday by the chair of the Ivy League Schools Board of Trustees. Magill, along with Harvard and MIT presidents, faced backlash for their testimony on anti-Semitism amid Israel-Hamas conflict. Jewish communities criticized her handling of pro-Israel and pro-Palestinian clashes. Liz Magill will stay until an interim president is appointed, according to Scott Bok, who is the chair of university's Board of Trustees.
There was a moment during yesterday's congressional hearing on anti-Semitism when I was asked if a call for the genocide of Jewish people on our campus would violate our policies. In that moment, I was focused on our university's longstanding policies aligned with the U.S. Constitution, which say that speech alone is not punishable. I was not focused on, but I should have been, the irrefutable fact that a call for genocide of Jewish people is a call for some of the most terrible violence human beings can perpetrate. It's evil, plain and simple. I want to be clear. A call for genocide of Jewish people is threatening, deeply so. It is intentionally meant to terrify a people who have been subjected to pogroms and hatred for centuries and were the victims of mass genocide in the Holocaust. In my view, it would be harassment or intimidation.
Meanwhile, Israel pounded the Gaza Strip from the north to the south on Saturday in an expanded phase of its 2-month-old war against Hamas. This after the United States wielded its UN Security Council veto to shield its ally Israel from a global demand for a ceasefire.
There were more Israeli strikes in the Gaza Strip on Saturday, after the United States vetoed an immediate humanitarian ceasefire at the UN Security Council on Friday.
We regretfully could not support it.
13 of the Security Council's 15 members voted for the resolution.
But we cannot vote in
Britain abstained. Riyad Mansour, the Palestinian UN envoy, said they reject the result.
Ceasefire. Ceasefire. Save lives.
Since the truce collapsed last week, Israel has expanded its ground campaign into the southern half of the Gaza Strip, storming the main southern city of Khan Yunis. The already overwhelmed Nasser hospital in the city has seen the dead and the wounded through the night on Friday. Residents of the city said on Saturday that Israeli forces were ordering people out of another district just west of positions the Israelis stormed earlier this week, suggesting a further assault could be imminent. Both sides have also reported a major surge in fighting in the north. The vast majority of Gaza's 2.3 million residents have already been forced from their homes. UN agencies say there is now effectively nowhere safe to go. Israel disputes that. It says it is limiting harm to civilians by providing them with maps showing areas that are safe. It also blames Hamas for causing civilian deaths by hiding among them. Hamas fighters deny that claim.
There does remain a gap between
Washington has said it told Israel to do more to protect civilians in the next phase of the war than it has so far. But Washington has continued to support Israel's insistence that a ceasefire would only benefit Hamas. Israel launched its campaign to annihilate Gaza's Hamas rulers after fighters rampaged through Israeli towns on October 7th, killing 1,200 people and capturing 240 hostages, according to Israeli tallies.
Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Saturday said that he appreciated United States' veto at the UN Security Council, blocking that particular demand for ceasefire in Israel's war against Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Listen in to what Netanyahu had to say. I greatly appreciate the correct stance that the United States has taken in the UN Security Council. The other countries need to understand that. On the one hand, it is impossible to support the elimination of Hamas, while on the other hand, calling for a halt to the war, which will prevent the elimination of Hamas. Therefore, Israel will continue our just war to eliminate Hamas and achieve the other goals of the war that we have set out. Back at home, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar spoke to Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammad Shatayyeh and reaffirmed India's long-standing position on the Palestine-Israel issue. Jaishankar posted the same on X, formerly known as Twitter, and wrote that, I spoke to the Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammad Shatayyeh this evening. He expressed deep concern on the situation in both Gaza and the West Bank. I reiterated India's long-standing position on Palestine, and we agreed to remain in touch. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Narendra Modi on the 19th of October, 12 days after the start of the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas, in a conversation with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, had also reiterated New Delhi's long-standing position on the Palestine-Israel issue. As per an earlier statement by the Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson Arindam Bagchi, he said India's long-standing position on the issue has been India has always advocated the resumption of direct negotiations towards establishing a sovereign, independent and viable state of Palestine living within secure and recognized borders, side by side at peace with Israel. I think that position remains imminent and the same. Meanwhile, drone footage from the Gaza city depicts the extensive damage caused by Israeli airstrikes and shelling, this after 2 months of the war. Take a look at some of this footage. The video that was shot on Friday shows an Israeli flag installed on a mound of dirt, tanks patrolling the area, and damaged streets and buildings. This is the current situation in the Gaza Strip. Video has been released by the Israeli military. Take a look at the destruction after about 2 months of war. Damaged streets and buildings, crumbled down to the rubble, a mound of dirt that houses the Israeli flag installed on it, various visuals of tanks patrolling the entire area. Shifting our focus to other top international developments, a new national poll conducted by the Wall Street Journal has shown that former United States President Donald Trump has a narrow lead over incumbent President Joe Biden if there was a rematch for the presidential chair in 2024. Given a choice between Trump and Joe Biden, 47% of the registered voters in the United States said that they will support Donald Trump in the election scheduled for next year. Biden was found to be trailing Trump by 4%, as only 43% of the registered American voters favored him. 10% of those questioned in the survey were still undecided about their particular preference, neither Joe Biden nor Donald Trump. Now, the Wall Street Journal poll finds Biden to be able to maintain only 87% of his supporters from the 2020 elections, whilst Trump, for him, the same number goes up to 94%. But there is a twist to this survey as well, because when given a hypothetical situation in which Trump is convicted of a felony charge, the voters split evenly between the two candidates, with 46% favoring Joe Biden and about 45% going with former US President Donald Trump. When a third party or an independent candidate is put in the mix, then Trump's edge over Biden widens a bit more. There is not a first instance or a survey which has shown Trump to be having a lead over Joe Biden. Other recent national polls have also given Donald Trump a narrow advantage as well. But problems are plenty for former US President Donald Trump. The latest developments in the legal proceedings involving former President Donald Trump. Take a look at this. In a New York court, an accounting expert who defended Donald Trump in a $250 million fraud case revealed that he has accrued nearly $900,000 in fees for his testimony. New York University Stern School of Business research professor Eli Bartov testified on Thursday, asserting that he found no evidence here of concealment. Now, Eli Bartov, a prominent accounting expert, he disclosed that he was paid about $1,350 per hour during a deposition in July. In court, he is mentioned having worked approximately 650 hours on the case, totaling about $877,000. The prosecution's expert witness, Michael McCarthy, on the other hand, reportedly received around $350,000 for his own testimony. But under questioning by lawyers for New York's Attorney General, Bartov revealed that the payments came from the Trump Organization and the former president's political action committee called Save America. The charges against Trump, his older sons, and company executives allege the exaggeration of asset values to secure more favorable loans, which they vehemently deny. Now, after Eli Bartov's testimony on Thursday, Trump asserted that the expert found absolutely no fraud or accounting fraud of any kind. Now, Trump is set to testify for the second time tomorrow on Monday, with Eli Bartov returning to the stand the very next day on Tuesday. And when we're talking about potential presidential elections, let's also take a look at what's happening in the now and then. Egypt's presidential elections, which are supposed to take place from the 10th of December till the 12th of December, will most likely see the 69-year-old incumbent Abdel Fattah Al-Sisi winning a third term, which would be a first for the country of 113 million people. Now, up until 2019, the constitution only allowed 2 presidential terms, and Al-Sisi was elected with no opposition to speak of, with around 97% of the votes in 2014 and 2018. He then pushed for constitutional amendments that legitimize Egyptian presidents to stay for a third term and extended the terms from 4 to 6 years. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah Al-Sisi is standing for a third term, with the result a resounding win yet again in sight. Meanwhile, wars on the country's borders, especially in Gaza, have helped him stand as the stability candidate despite Egyptians' growing economic desperation. But while President Abdel Fattah Al-Sisi's reputation has improved somewhat, observers fear that neither Egypt's economy crisis nor the dire human rights situation will be resolved.
Egypt's President Abdel Fattah Al-Sisi is poised to win 6 more years in power, a result that isn't in doubt. That's despite growing despair about soaring prices, which have stirred criticism of Sisi's record on the economy and his crackdowns on dissent. In power for close to a decade, the former army chief presents himself as a guarantor of stability in a volatile neighbourhood. 2 wars on Egypt's borders, in Gaza and Sudan, have hardly hurt that image. Sisi announced his campaign for the December 10th to 12th election would be curtailed to save funds for aid to Gaza, though giant posters of his face are everywhere. If only he'd been content with the 10 years, says Mohammed Anwar Sadat, a moderate opposition figure and former member of parliament.
Before the events of Gaza, the pressure on economic and living conditions, as well as other issues, were questioned by people and had created a state of anger against President Sisi and big reservations about his policies. Since the beginning of the events in Gaza, there has been a state of calm and tranquility in the minds of many, who started to feel it was better if the current president continues.
Sisi has overseen a crackdown since leading the 2013 ouster of Egypt's first democratically elected president, Mohamed Morsi of the Muslim Brotherhood. Sisi and the military establishment are tight, while the Brotherhood has been driven underground or abroad. The constitution was amended in 2019 to let Sisi stand for a 3rd time, and it extended the presidential term to 6 years from 4. Sisi was declared winner with 97% of the vote in the previous 2 elections. But Egyptian authorities seem wary of a public backlash this time, so 3 candidates have qualified to stand, all of them low profile and muted in their criticism. This is Medhat Az-Zahed, head of the Socialist Popular Alliance Party, which is boycotting the vote.
They needed a degree of competition because of pressure concerning freedoms and human rights in Egypt and pent-up popular frustrations. So there was an attempt to release these frustrations through peaceful means, so long as the ceiling is defined.
A national dialogue earlier this year allowed the airing of a few critical views, and some prisoners were pardoned. But arrests have continued. Parliament is dominated by Sisi's supporters, and his allies control the media. A campaign by leftist politician Ahmed al-Tantawi, the most prominent potential opposition candidate, briefly tapped into pent-up discontent. But he dropped out of the race, citing pressure from pro-government forces. He's now facing a judicial case on allegations of using illicit means to collect endorsements. Sisi's campaign office did not respond to requests for comment.
The current president can get at most 1% of the votes out of real support, and I expect he can get 10% of votes using the same ways he used to gather endorsements. But as for the sweeping majority of the Egyptian people, they were waiting for a serious candidate.
Fears about the economy have not gone away. The state has crowded out the private sector. Egypt's debts have ballooned after a spending spree on mega projects like a new capital east of Cairo. And prices have rocketed for ordinary Egyptians, like Ahmed Khudair, who had this message for Sisi.
We ask him to lower the prices a bit for people to afford them, because families have 5 or 6 members, so lowering the prices would help people and help them live. I call on people before anything, before focusing on prices, to go vote for the President of the nation, because this way he will help people. He's already helping people.
Meanwhile, Vladimir Putin has announced his candidature for the 2024 presidential elections that is scheduled to take place on the 17th of March. A win over there, which is all but certain, it seems, would allow Putin a 5th term in office and give him another 6 years as he looks to prolong his grip on Russia.
Russian President Vladimir Putin on Friday told soldiers who had fought in Ukraine that he would run for a 5th term in the 2024 election. It's a move that would allow the former KGB spy to stay in power until at least 2030. Putin was handed the presidency by Boris Yeltsin in 1999 and has already served as president for longer than any other ruler of Russia since Joseph Stalin. He confirmed his bid for re-election while meeting with war veterans to award them Russia's highest military honor.
I will not hide that I have had different thoughts at different times, but it's now time to make a decision. You are right. It is such a time when a decision needs to be made. I will run for the position of President of the Russian Federation.
For Putin, the election, which will take place in March 2024, is a formality. The 71-year-old has no discernible successor, and with the support of the state-run media, and almost no mainstream public dissent, he is certain to win. On the streets of Moscow, support broadly favoured the incumbent.
I think that there is no better candidate than Vladimir Putin. I just can't imagine one. I will vote only for him.
In general, I approve. Hopefully he has got enough health for this. There is a lot of negativity coming his way from different directions, but I believe that Russia needs him. I consider myself to be a patriot, a monarchist to a certain extent, so I think it is necessary.
Opposition politicians say a handful of other unthreatening candidates will be put up to run against Putin and lose, in what they say has become a carefully stage-managed imitation of democracy. Despite the lack of competition, Putin faces the most serious set of challenges of any Kremlin leader since Mikhail Gorbachev grappled with the crumbling Soviet Union more than 3 decades ago. The war in Ukraine triggered the biggest confrontation with the West since the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. The West casts Putin as a war criminal and a dictator who has led Russia into an imperial-style land grab in Ukraine. Subsequent sanctions have delivered the biggest external shock to the Russian economy for decades. And Putin also faced a failed mutiny by Russia's most powerful mercenary, Yevgeny Prigozhin, in June. Prigozhin was killed in a plane crash 2 months to the day after the mutiny.
And next up, shifting our focus to some domestic developments, a major breakthrough in the investigation into the murder of Karni Sena Chief Sukhdev Singh Gogamedi. In a joint operation, the Delhi Police Crime Branch and the Rajasthan Police have made a major breakthrough, arresting 3 men, including the alleged shooters as well. According to reports, the 2 alleged shooters, Rohit Rathore from Jaipur and Nitin Fauji from Mahendragarh, were arrested in Chandigarh Sector 22. A third associate, Udham Singh, was also taken into custody. Now the arrest comes after the police identified the alleged killers and announced a cash reward of 5 lakh for the information leading to their capture. Tragically, Sukhdev Singh Gogamedi was shot dead in the living room of his house in Jaipur on the 5th of December. CCTV footage surfaced, purportedly showing the assailants opening fire at him in broad daylight. It was a shocking and brazen attack that sent shock waves throughout the community. The accused will now be handled to the Jaipur police for further interrogation. They're already on their way, making their move towards Jaipur. An 11-member special investigation team has also been formed by the Rajasthan police to delve deeper into this heinous crime. Now, in a twist to the plot, another individual, Ramveer Jatt, was arrested in Jaipur on Saturday for allegedly contracting the shooters to kill Gogamedi. Ramveer Jatt, described as one of the conspirators, was instrumental in preparing the groundwork for Fauji in Jaipur ahead of the killing. The two were close friends, having studied together in class 12 in Mahendragarh. Now the investigation is ongoing and the authorities are determined to bring all those involved to justice.
देखिए 5 दिसंबर 2023 को जयपुर में श्री राष्ट्रीय राजपूत करनी सेना के अध्यक्ष श्री सुखदेव सिंह गोगामेडी की हत्या हुई थी। इस संदर्भ में 3 आरोपियों को जो मेन अक्यूज्ड है उनको दिल्ली पुलिस क्राइम ब्रांच ने गिरफ्तार किया है। डीसीपी अमित, एसीपी उमेश और इंस्पेक्टर राकेश की टीम ने। सबसे पहला आरोपी नितिन फौजी डूंगरपुर जाट महेंद्रगढ़ का रहने वाला है, उसको गिरफ्तार किया। उसके बाद रोहित राठौड़ मकराना राजस्थान का रहने वाला है और तीसरा इनके साथ उधम सिंह जो हिसार का रहने वाला है। अब इसमें मर्डर के बाद जो राजस्थान पुलिस के एडीजी क्राइम है MN दिनेश, उनसे हमारा कोऑर्डिनेशन हुआ था उन्होंने ये बताया कि मर्डर के बाद इन्होंने जयपुर से डीडवाना के लिए टैक्सी ली, डीडवाना से बस पकड़ के दिल्ली की तरफ चले हैं, इसलिए हमारे कोऑर्डिनेशन की आवश्यकता पड़ी। हमने अपने कमिश्नर साहब से विमर्श करके उनके निर्देश पे इस एनडीआर की टीम को इस काम पे लगाया। जब हम उनको ट्रैक करने लगे तो हमें लगा कि वो डीडवाना से दिल्ली आने के बजाय ढूंढाहेड़ा में ही बस से उतर गए, सॉरी धारूहेड़ा में, और धारूहेड़ा से उन्होंने एक ऑटो किया और रेवाड़ी रेलवे स्टेशन पहुंचे। हमारी टीम लगातार उनको ट्रैक करती रही। रेवाड़ी से उन्होंने एक ट्रेन पकड़ी जो हिसार रेलवे स्टेशन पे, हमने सीसीटीवी फुटेज निकाला हिसार का। वहाँ से जब हम आगे ट्रैक किए तो हमें लगा कि इनके साथ और लड़के जुड़ गए वहाँ पे। वहाँ से इन्होंने हिमाचल के लिए एक टैक्सी की और सीधे मनाली की तरफ चल पड़े। हमारी जितनी टीमें थी, कुछ टीम हिसार में स्टेशन होगी, कुछ दिल्ली में, कुछ धारूहेड़ा में, कुछ राजस्थान में, कुछ हिमाचल में और कुछ चंडीगढ़ में। एनडीआर की सारी टीमें चारों तरफ फैल गई। राजस्थान पुलिस के जो एडीजी क्राइम की टीम थी, उनके भी 2-3 लोग हमारी टीम के साथ चंडीगढ़ की तरफ और हिमाचल की तरफ चल दिए। तो इसका जब हम रियल टाइम में ट्रैक कर रहे थे तो वहाँ से पता चला कि हिमाचल से फिर ये वापसी की तरफ आ रहे हैं। तो कल रात में चंडीगढ़ में हमारी टीम्स ने इंटरसेप्ट किया इनको और इन तीनों को वहाँ से लेके आए और अब इनको हम गिरफ्तार करके इसको राजस्थान पुलिस के हवाले जयपुर के लिए रवाना करें। देखो, 2 तो शूटर है और तीसरा जो ये उधम सिंह है, ये हिसार से इनका सब टैक्सी वगैरह करा के इनको लॉजिस्टिक्स प्रोवाइड करके पैसा वैसा और हिमाचल तक इनको लेके गया और इनको पूरा लॉजिस्टिक प्रोवाइडर उधम सिंह। अभी इंट्रोगेशन चल रहा है और नितिन फौजी का भी चल रहा है, इनका भी चल रहा है, उसका खुलासा बाद में किया जाएगा। ये ऑपरेशन जो डिटेल थे वो मैंने आपको बताया, वो इन्होंने बता दिया है कि पिस्टल कहाँ पे छुपाई है, वो सारी चीजें कार्रवाई भी चल।
ये सोडाला थाने की तस्वीरें हैं और आप देख सकते हैं कल जिस आरोपी को पुलिस ने गिरफ्तार किया था, रामवीर नाम का जो ये शख्स था, जो कि महेंद्रगढ़ का रहने वाला हरियाणा का, इसने पूरा सहयोग किया था यहाँ से फरारी के लिए। और आप देख सकते हैं ये जो बस है, इस बस में रामवीर को ले जाया जा रहा है, इसका मेडिकल करवाया जाएगा और उसके बाद में यहाँ पुलिस का भारी जाब्ता, सोडाला थाना है, आप देख सकते हैं कि पुलिस का भारी जाब्ता, यहाँ कमांडोज जो हैं और उसके साथ साथ में खुद यहाँ डीसीपी यहाँ पर मॉनिटरिंग कर रहे हैं और तमाम जो पुलिस के अधिकारी हैं वो यहाँ पर मौजूद हैं। यहाँ से जो है ये जो आरोपी है जिसने सहयोग किया था दोनों शूटर्स को, रामवीर नाम का आरोपी है। एक जो मुख्य आरोपी है नितिन, वो अभी अंदर ही है और उससे पूछताछ की जा रही है। रामवीर को पुलिस ने कल गिरफ्तार कराया था, 24 घंटे के अंदर मेडिकल कराना होता है, इसलिए इसे जो है यहाँ से ले जाया जा रहा है और यहाँ पर इसका जो है मेडिकल कराया जाएगा। 2 आरोपी अभी दिल्ली से रवाना हुए हैं, उधम सिंह और रोहित राठौड़, उन्हें जयपुर लाया जा रहा है, पूछताछ उनसे की जाएगी। लेकिन आप देख सकते हैं यहाँ पुलिस का कितना भारी जाब्ता तैनात है, क्योंकि ये बड़ा हत्याकांड था, हाई प्रोफाइल हत्याकांड था। और आप देख सकते हैं गेट को खोला जा रहा है और यहाँ से जो है रवाना किया जा रहा है। इस बस के द्वारा ये रवाना हो चुकी है बस मेडिकल करवाने के लिए। जो आरोपी रामवीर को गिरफ्तार किया था कड़ी सुरक्षा के बीच में, ये आप देख सकते हैं ये पुलिस वैन है और यहाँ से जो है रवाना कर दिया जा रहा है। ये आप देख सकते हैं, ये तस्वीरें आप देख सकते हैं। रामवीर ये पुलिस के जवान हैं, उसे लेके जा रहे हैं अस्पताल, इसका मेडिकल करवाया जाएगा और उसके साथ साथ में इससे भी पूछताछ की जा रही है कि इसने कितना सहयोग किया था। और ये सबसे बड़ी बात यह है कि ये जो आरोपी है इसने सहयोग किया था दोनों आरोपियों को यहाँ से फरार करवाने में। इस आरोपी ने जो है सहयोग किया था और अब इस आरोपी को मेडिकल के लिए ले जाया जा रहा है और कड़ी सुरक्षा के बीच में मेडिकल के लिए यहाँ से ले जाया जा रहा है। अब इनसे पूछताछ की जाएगी और इनसे जानकारी ली जाएगी कि इनके साथ साथ में और कौन कौन इसमें शामिल हैं।
Well, moving on, political developments and how chess pieces are moving on the political chessboard. A crucial meeting of the newly elected 54 MLAs to pick the legislative party leader, the chief minister essentially, is currently underway in Chhattisgarh. The meeting is expected to end the suspense surrounding who will be the next chief minister of Chhattisgarh. Now, prominent BJP figures including Chhattisgarh in charge Om Mathur, Union Minister Mansukh Mandavia and State Co-in charge Nitin Nabin are part of the Central Observer team, and are attending the meeting. Notably, the process of electing the chief minister in Chhattisgarh does not adhere to a predetermined formula, but rather follows the BJP's parliamentary board system. The outcome of today's meeting is eagerly being awaited, as it will unveil the chosen leader who will take the helm of the state's leadership. The Bharatiya Janata Party, buoyed by its historic triumph in the recent assembly polls, is optimistic about a sweeping victory in the upcoming 2024 general elections as well. Against this backdrop, the potential chief ministerial candidates are said to include tribal leaders and OBC politicians as well, adding an element of anticipation to the decision-making process. Adding to the political intrigue, Bharatiya Janata Party observers for Chhattisgarh, Union Ministers Sarbananda Sonowal and Arjun Munda, they arrived in Raipur this very morning to oversee and contribute to the proceedings. Their presence underscores the significance of this particular meeting as the BJP strategizes and positions itself for the political landscape that is set to come ahead. Who will be the Chief Minister of Chhattisgarh? That suspense likely to be lifted very soon. And shifting our focus to the other state that recently underwent assembly elections, Mizoram's newly sworn-in Chief Minister Lal Dohma, in one of his first moves, emphasized the paramount importance of safeguarding the state's boundaries. He announced the imminent establishment of a state-level boundary committee to effectively address border issues with neighboring states. He asserted that this committee, comprising representatives from recognized political parties, NGOs, church leaders and the MPF, would be swiftly activated to respond to any rising boundary concerns. Now, Lal Dohma acknowledged the need for his government to settle in and assess the state's situation before implementing comprehensive measures. Highlighting the significance of the border areas, he reiterated the commitment to prioritize the safeguarding of the state's boundaries. Addressing economic concerns, Lal Dohma outlined the government's dedication to uplifting the farmers' community. He disclosed plans to establish a fixed minimum price for local agricultural products, including turmeric, broomstick ginger and miso chili. Now, farmers will have the flexibility to sell their produce either to the government or private traders. And the Chief Minister also confirmed that the SEDP fund, which is amounting to about 150 crores under the Finance Department and allocated by the previous MNF government, would remain untouched. Lal Dohma also emphasized that the state budget would be a policy-oriented budget with a specific roadmap in place. Additionally, a resource mobilization committee is also being set. Moving on, the Congress party has distanced itself from the businesses of its Rajya Sabha Member of Parliament Dheeraj Sahu after over rupees 300 crore were found from his premises in the income tax raids in the past few days. Take a look at Jairam Ramesh's tweet. Congress General Secretary Jairam Ramesh wrote on social media platform X, and I quote, "The Indian National Congress is in no way connected with the businesses of Dheeraj Sahu, Member of Parliament. Only he can explain and should explain how huge amounts of cash have been reportedly unearthed by the income tax authorities from his properties." Now, the Income Tax Department seized close to rupees 300 crore in simultaneous raids conducted at 25 locations across Odisha and Jharkhand linked to Congress Rajya Sabha MP Dheeraj Sahu. The raids were conducted at premises linked to Baldev Sahu and Group of Companies Limited. The country liquor manufacturing and selling firm is run by the family of Dheeraj Sahu. Highlighting the raids, Prime Minister Narendra Modi posted photos of the large amounts of currency and also posted on X, formerly known as Twitter, about the amount of currency notes which were recovered during the raids. Taking a tongue-in-cheek dig at the Congress party, Prime Minister Modi wrote that the countrymen should look at the pile of notes and also listen to the quote-unquote honest speeches of the Congress leaders, of course being sarcastic in his tone. IT personnel first raided the premises of Baldev Sahu companies on the 6th of December on allegations of tax evasion, from where they claim to have recovered 156 bags of cash. And simultaneous raids were then conducted in Bhubaneswar, Sundargarh, Sambalpur, in Odisha and a few other places in Jharkhand as well. The IT department has said that the total seized amount is likely to go up as the counting process continues to be on.
लगातार जो भांडाफोड़ हुआ है उसके मुताबिक आप देख लीजिए कि इन्होंने पहले 200 तक की हिसाब चल रही थी, लेकिन अभी ईडी, आईटी, सीबीआई इन लोगों के जो कार्यक्रम बने उसमें इसको बिल्कुल टॉप सीक्रेट रखा गया ताकि ये बात आखिरी मिनट तक उन अफसरों को भी ना पता चले। एक भारी संख्या में अफसरों को इकट्ठा करके ये रेड की गई, टॉप सीक्रेसी मेंटेन की गई, जिसकी वजह से ये काम जो है उसको अंजाम मिल पाया। और इस में जो इनके प्रमुख कार्यालय हैं जो कि 30 किलोमीटर दूर बोलांगीर से था, वहाँ 200 करोड़ बरामद हुए। ये धीरज साहू जो हैं ये तीसरी बार के राज्यसभा के सांसद हैं कांग्रेस पार्टी से, 2 बार पहले चुनाव लड़ चुके हैं, दोनों बार हारे हैं। 2 बार हारे हुए व्यक्ति को 3 बार लगातार राज्यसभा का मेंबर ऑफ पार्लियामेंट बनाया गया और राहुल गांधी जी के काफी नजदीक हैं। और वो तो जाहिर होता है इस बात से कि सोनिया जी, राहुल जी, प्रियंका जी और मल्लिकार्जुन खड़गे सब ने चुप्पी साधी हुई है, मुंह में सबके दही जमा हुआ है। और यही कारण है कि भ्रष्टाचार को लगातार फैलाने का काम, generations after generations, the tradition of corruption has been kept alive.
Moving on, construction works on the Ram temple in Uttar Pradesh's Ayodhya is going on in full swing. The General Secretary of the Sri Ram Janmabhoomi Tirath Kshetra Trust, Champat Rai, he unveiled stunning images of the temple's inner sanctum sanctorum on the 9th of December. Take a look at some of these pictures that he put out on X, formerly known as Twitter. Now, this preview comes ahead of the consecration ceremony scheduled for the 22nd of January in Ayodhya, and Champat Rai mentioned that the sanctum sanctorum of Lord Sri Ramalala is nearly complete with the recent completion of the lighting fitting work. These images offered a glimpse into the splendid sanctum sanctorum, heightening the anticipation of the devotees eagerly awaiting the consecration of the temple. Now, meanwhile, Chairman of the Ayodhya Ram Mandir Construction Committee, Niprendra Mishra, he visited the construction work for the Ram Mandir. Visuals on your screens. On the 8th of December, the Trust had earlier released pictures showcasing the current status of the under construction Ram Janmabhoomi temple. Notably, 3 different artists are sculpting 3 distinct idols of Ram Lala, and the finest among them will be chosen before the consecration on the 22nd of January. Meanwhile, addressing the book launch event of TV9 Network Director Hemant Sharma's book Ram Phir Laute, RSS General Secretary Dattatreya Hosabale said that there has always been a struggle for the restoration of religion, and it is sometimes necessary for creation. There was the struggle for Sri Ram Janmabhoomi 72 times, and every generation fought but never gave up. The RSS leader said that the Ram Temple movement, spearheaded by the VHP and other right-wing organizations, was for a national integration.
तो राम जी फिर लौटेंगे। राम जी अपने जीवन में 14 वर्ष के वनवास में रहे। रामलला सदियों से अपने जगह से बहुत ही वैभवहीन स्थिति में संघर्ष के कारण बनकर, विवाद के केंद्र बनकर, परंतु विश्व भर में जो राम भक्त है उनके लिए तो सदैव प्रेरणा की केंद्र बनकर वो वहाँ एक छोटे से इसमें पिछले कई वर्षों से जो रामलला विराजमान तो थे, लेकिन किस स्थिति में थे देखने वालों को तो मालूम है। अभी राम जी जैसे हमने आंदोलन में सदियों बार, सैकड़ों बार हमने नारे लगाए, सौगंध राम की खाते हैं, मंदिर वहीं बनाए। तो मंदिर अभी बन गया है, उसका पहला चरण संपूर्ण हो गया। उस मंदिर के गर्भगृह में रामलला विराजमान के प्राण प्रतिष्ठा लाखों करोड़ों अरबों लोगों के हृदय मन को, आंखों को शांति देने वाले, आनंद देने वाले ऐसे एक क्षण आ रहा है। उस समय ऐसे एक पुस्तक, ऐसे एक ग्रंथ, इसकी आवश्यकता है। इसमें 8 अध्यायों में राम मंदिर के एक संक्षिप्त इतिहास, राम और अयोध्या के संक्षिप्त इतिहास, आंदोलन के बारे में इतिहास, आंदोलन के महानायकों के बारे में कुछ परिचय, इन सारे विषयों को 8 अध्यायों में इतने 1.5 महीने 2 महीने के अंदर हेमंत जी ने बहुत ही सार्थक ढंग से, इसकी भाषा अद्भुत है। इतने कम एक ग्रंथ के अंदर लोगों को सारे बताने का प्रयत्न उन्होंने जिस प्रकार किया है वह प्रशंसनीय है। मैं हेमंत जी के इस लेखन सामर्थ्य के प्रति न केवल अभिनंदन करता हूं, उसका वंदन करता हूं।
And even as we wrap this segment up, take a look at this News 9 Plus exclusive. Because on the eve of her 14th birthday, Asha Matre was waiting for a cake that her diplomat father had promised. Except Ravindra Matre never really showed up. And that's because nearly 40 years ago, Ravindra Matre was killed in cold blood in the United Kingdom. Multiple people were charged with the murder of Ravindra Matre. But who was the man who pulled the trigger? And 4 decades on, what is it that we have learned? News 9 Plus has published a full-blown investigative documentary on the killer of Ravindra Matre. Where is he now and the possible impact of his whereabouts? You can watch the full documentary on the News 9 Plus application. Meanwhile, here's a snippet. Take a look. Thanks for watching this segment.
I have not been told any official version. I know whatever I saw. Nobody's contacted us to see whether we are alive or dead. Not a peep out of subsequent governments even after that.
He's the person who actually pulled the trigger, killing Mr. Matre.
Is he still alive?
49-year-old Birmingham-based
Indian diplomat vanishes. On birthday, daughter waits
for missing father.
KLA claims responsibility. Demands Kashmiri separatists.
Maqbool Bhatt's release. Abducted diplomat
found murdered in Leicestershire.
After Indian diplomat Ravindra Matre's killing in 1984, 3 kidnappers were arrested by UK and Maqbool Bhatt was immediately hanged by India. But who was the person who actually pulled the trigger and killed Ravindra Matre?